All right, good morning, everyone. So, I have officially reached 5,500 miles on my 21 3.0 Duramax. So, I did a review just on the overall truck. Sorry if you watched that and expected a review on the Duramax itself. I wanted to do a separate video just because of since they are putting the Duramax and the Tahoes and Suburbans now, and I believe even the Escalades maybe, that people might be interested in just a video on the Duramax or just a conversation really. So I'm going to tell you some of the things I like, dislike, would I buy it again, and some of the just general comments I've heard or read about and when I bought my truck. So first off, we'll start with why I bought my truck and what I like about it. So when I bought the truck, I was driving about 20 miles one way to work. So 45 miles a day round trip. And I had the 5.3 prior. Thought, hey, this would be with fuel economy, it might be a good option. And when I was driving back and forth to work, it did very well. I do like it. Fuel economy was, not quite as good, which I'll discuss here more in a minute. But, averaging 25, 26, mostly highway, it's pretty good. I also tow a small trailer. It's a 20-foot car hauler or my 10-foot dump trailer, probably once a week, once every couple weeks at least. So so there's a nice niche that this does fit in if you're towing the trailer. So overall, happy with that. I would not buy this. I would not buy it again if I was driving just short distance. So if I was driving, 5 miles to work one way, I wouldn't. I wouldn't buy it. And that just has to do with like the regen cycles and that kind of stuff. Because if you interrupt the regen cycle, it just starts over, and that's really going to kill your fuel economy if it can never complete that regen cycle. After I don't remember the exact time, maybe it's 3 interruption of the regen cycle, it'll basically put it in limp mode. I have not ran into that problem whatsoever, but again, I'm normally driving 10, 15, 20 miles at the minimum. So again, if I was going 5 miles down the road to work, I would consider, getting either the 5.3 or the even maybe the 4-cylinder. I've not personally driven the 4-cylinder, but heard some pretty decent stuff on the little turbo 4-cylinder. So that's one of the things I wouldn't buy it. The next would be if I'm towing a big trailer often. So if I was retired and traveling a lot with a big camper, or trailering a heavy trailer every day of the week, I would step up to 3/4 ton with a bigger Duramax. I know some people's probably gonna dislike that comment, but this has a really good niche for those who tow every so often. And again, it's not really the power; it has the power, but you still don't. When you get into big windy situations, you still don't have enough weight on the truck itself. And it could use more power, but for small trailers or towing monthly or something like that, it's great. It's a fantastic combination. Just talk a little bit on probably, so those are the two things. So I wouldn't buy it if I was traveling short distances, or probably not towing a trailer at all. If you don't tow a trailer, you probably should consider buying the gas engine, just because the upkeep alone, the diesels do have higher upkeep, just the cost of them. Let's talk a little bit about the power. So this, of course, has significant more torque than the 5.3 that I had prior. Horsepower range, I think, is about the same. So it does very well. It does good towing. It holds, your speed very well with or without a trailer. The 5.3 with some of these trailers I tow struggled a little bit more. So that's why it makes a good combination for your light to medium trailers. It really does. If you've driven the 6.2 or something like that, this of course does not have the horsepower the 6.2 has. So the 6.2 is a beast of an engine, a lot of horsepower, and it's, I want to say it's put you back to the seat pretty hard. This Duramax, of course, does not do that. It has the torque. It has the torque right where you need it. And so when you're going down, cruising at 70 miles per hour, 60 miles per hour, whatever you drive at, it's right in its sweet spot, and it just chugs along. So if you're the type of person who really wants that snappy action, huge, either big Duramax power, this is probably not the engine for you. I would consider the 6.2. 6.2, you have to run premium fuel and everything else in it. So fuel cost wise, there's not much of a difference. It's just the power itself. But for towing a trailer, you can't go wrong with either one of them. I would probably, if you're towing a medium to light trailer, I would probably lean towards the Duramax if you don't really care about that snappy power. So that's just kind of the pros and cons of both sides. Again, I'm extremely happy with it. Now I just want to talk briefly on just some of the things that you will either hear or just some general comments of things that maybe you didn't know prior. So one, let's talk about fuel economy. So I think the 21s are, and maybe it's just mine's not quite broken enough, but I don't know that the 21s are getting quite as good a fuel economy. I think they were actually derated just slightly on fuel, and I could be wrong. You guys correct me, I'm sure, if I'm wrong on this, but I don't believe they're getting quite the fuel economies the 20 did. I think GM had to make some tuning on the DEF regen cycles and that kind of stuff. And so I don't think you're going to see as many 30 plus, 33 miles per gallon. Maybe if you're driving an extremely flat situation, maybe that works out for you on the 21s, but maybe you could get away with the 20s, but I think once they do a reprogram on those, you might not see that as well. But I could be wrong. But I've not seen the 33, but I've seen 28, 29, stuff like that. So again, I'm not taking away from it, just have realistic expectations. With that, the fuel economy gauge, I just thought of this. The works great without a trailer. I've tested it a few times and it seems to be pretty accurate. It is not accurate with the trailer on. It's normally, I don't know how far it's off, but last time on my other video, I towed my car hauler with a generator on it, which is probably, 5,000 pounds or so. And it said 13.5 miles per gallon. When I checked it, I was 16 miles per gallon empty without the generator and 15.5 with generator, but it said like 13 or 13.5. So it was off quite a bit. So just know that. The next thing, the noise. These aren't noisy trucks. The cab itself is pretty quiet. I don't know, I've seen videos of people saying how quiet it is, and I think that's very true compared to the older diesels. But for your newer ones, I don't know that it's any quieter than any of the other ones. So not saying it's good or bad, it's kind of when people talk about how quiet it is, I think this is what you should expect from most of your newer designs. I made another video, sorry, I'm looking at my notes, to make sure cover everything I wanted to. The oil type, that is, if you see my video, I had a free oil change from Chevy. They put the wrong oil in it. That's a whole nother video. That's probably something I dislike, is that there's only 2 approved oils right now for the truck. One's from GM and one's from Mobil. And they're pretty expensive. You're not going to find it at any local place, especially the Mobil, more than likely. So until that gets in stock or gets expanded, it's kind of disappointing. I do change my own oil. So I'll be stuck going to the GM parts counter and paying, $8 a quart for the AC Delco oil. The Mobil oil, I think, maybe $10. I think Summit has it right now, but it's about $10 a quart. So I wish it was a standard oil, or an oil that was, mass produced, that you could get pretty easily. So that's probably not a complaint, just something to be aware of. The fuel filter treatment, if you don't have, if you're switching over from a gas, you need to understand that if it gets, pretty cold, you're probably going to need to put some anti-gel in there in your tank. So just, knowing that ahead of time. I know it was pretty cold. It was around 0 degrees around here for quite a while, and got down to negative, some negative temperatures, which we normally do not see. And a lot of the diesels, when I took my truck in for that oil change, the service guy made a comment that a lot of the big diesels were down, and they had a lot that were waiting for fuel filter changes because we were not as used to it. So that's just something to be aware of. An added, I don't want to say an added cost, it's not that much, but it does. If you live in a cold environment, it could add up over, say, a gas engine. The oil pump belt, a lot of people make comments on. There is an oil pump, and it is belt driven. It is an oil. It's in back of the engine, so you actually have to slide the transmission back to change it. It has 150,000 mile service is what they suggest on it. I'm not too concerned with that. A lot of people have that concern. Personally, I'm not going to keep the truck more than likely to 150,000 miles, so it's probably not that big of an issue to me. As it gets up in its mileage, my understanding, I wouldn't think it would be that hard to slide the transmission back and replace it. But again, it is a headache, but what's not a headache on your newer vehicles? So just be aware of that. Its service rating is 150,000 miles. DEF, it does really sips the DEF normally, the diesel exhaust fluid. Towing, I did definitely see that it would use quite a bit more. It's very interesting. People talk about miles per gallon on DEF. That is definitely one way to look at it. It's really generally based on a percentage of fuel used. So somewhere around 1.8, 2% of your fuel use. So if you use 100 gallons of fuel, you're going to use 2 gallons of DEF. So that's kind of how. So if you're getting less miles per gallon, you're going to be using more fuel, which in return uses more DEF. I did see another guy's information. I forgot his name. I think his was around 6% DEF, which seems really high. That to me it'd be interesting to see if either cheap fuel might have been a cause, and if it wasn't cheap fuel, was how much oil consumption. I'd be a little more concerned with oil consumption blocking off your particulate filter and needing to regen more. That may not be the case, but 6% usage would be considered extreme, I would say, for most cases. Average over the entire time I've had my truck, I believe mine's right around that 1.5 was the first time. Then I think after towing that trailer and stuff, I was up in there 2% average over the entire life. So that just be aware of that. It's not a huge added cost. If you're towing, it's definitely gonna because you're using more fuel, you're gonna need to use more DEF at the same time. It could be a headache. I personally do not use the box. That seems like too big of a headache. I'm not gonna mess with these boxes or gallons. I just go to the pump at the truck stop. If I didn't have truck stops locally, I would, that would be maybe another point why I would lean away from the this engine, unless I towed often or I really needed the 3 liter. So, but using it at your local truck stop is pretty easy. Love's truck stop, there's a lot of those in this area. It's a little more difficult. I think you actually have to go in to the store. The other ones around, though, you could just pay at the pump, and it's super easy. I've used them twice now. Like I said, never used the gallon stuff, but that seems like a big headache, and you risk spilling. So overall, that's my thoughts on the truck, where I would buy it, where I wouldn't buy it, and overall, I'm extremely happy with it. I have not knock on wood, I probably will today. I haven't had, the check engine lights. I believe a lot of people with the 20s had issues early on. And so I think GM sorted most of those out. I haven't seen a ton of those, but you always see you always see everyone. You'll find 15 people with the same problem you're having, because everyone's looking for that specific problem, and then people start reading it and then get concerned. But there's a lot of these out there, and I think they're sorting the problems out pretty quick. So overall, extremely happy. For my use, I would definitely buy it again, but there's a lot of situations. If I was driving short distances, or probably my wife was driving it, I don't know that I'd buy it for her, just because she drives 8 miles to work and back, and I don't want her to have to mess with the DEF and that kind of stuff. So it's very interesting. They're going in with the Tahoes and Suburbans. Like I said, maybe you buy it, maybe you don't, but those are my thoughts. Feel free to ask comments or suggestions, or correct me if I've misspoke on anything. It's definitely not intentional. If there's anything else you guys want to know, or for me to make another video about, please let me know. Please subscribe and like if you like the videos. I'll continue to make them as I continue using the truck. So thanks for your feedback.